Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we're going to answer some questions left on yesterday's video about the departure of Kathleen Kennedy from Lucasfilm. No surprise, there were a ton of questions from that video, and I'll get to a few of them here, starting with this one from Asher Kennedy, who asked, "Hey Thor, this obviously raises the question of who will replace her. The only name that comes to mind immediately for me is Dave Filoni. And while I think he'd do an okay job with Star Wars, you also have to think that Lucasfilm has a lot of other properties like Indiana Jones. I think the best person to replace Kathy would be a smart businessman, not a creative, that would set up individual creatives to provide visions for individual properties. But more importantly than who replaces Kathy, what is the direction that Star Wars should take from here on? Retcon the sequels, EU animated stuff, Old Republic, or something else entirely?" And first of all here, when it comes to who might be replacing Kennedy, according to the most recent Hollywood Reporter article where they are discussing all the different candidates, some you have heard of like Filoni or Favreau and even J.J. Abrams, and maybe others you haven't heard of because they're more on the business side of things, not necessarily creatives that get the headlines, if you will. But according to one insider they have, Dave Filoni is Disney's top choice to be the next president of Lucasfilm. Now, how true that is or isn't, I don't know. And personally, I find that kind of hard to believe. Not that I don't think Filoni is an option or on the table or that Disney would consider him, but as this article or one of the other articles I read about this morning pointed out, only about 10% of the job as president of Lucasfilm is actually dealing with the creative side of things. You're dealing a lot with Disney and just other business things. You're not really sitting down and creating stories or working necessarily directly with the creatives. And so I don't necessarily know that that is the right fit for Dave Filoni. I mean, I know some people don't like the things he's done, some people do, and I even have a video that should be out tomorrow. It was a different question. I was going to have that video out on Monday and then the Andor trailer dropped, but I have a video kind of going into some of that tomorrow about Dave Filoni's version of the Force and some of the things he might be doing in the Ahsoka series. But anyway, according to that insider, it seems like Filoni is one of their top choices, or maybe the top choice. And I think what is interesting about Filoni is that if there was anybody who might be willing to, say, turn to George Lucas for some help, and if there was anybody Lucas would be willing to help and maybe not necessarily come back and do anything, but give some solid advice or maybe some story ideas, or maybe come back in some small capacity, I think that person is Dave Filoni, and that then ties into your question, what should they do? If Kennedy is leaving, as I have said, I think this is an opportunity to get some attention back, to maybe win some fans back over. So now that you have their attention, now that you maybe have them willing to give you a chance, what do you do with that chance? And honestly, what I think you do is something in relation to George Lucas. Now, I don't know that you retcon the sequels. I don't know that you don't retcon the sequels, but I don't know if that's necessarily what you need to do immediately. But I think you try to get Lucas and Filoni together for one last sort of project. Again, I'm not saying Lucas is coming in and writing the whole thing or directing or anything quite like that. But I think getting his name attached to whatever you do next or whatever your first real major piece of content is that you are producing without Kennedy, because there are some things in the pipeline, like the Mando and Grogu movie, that will still be attached to her one way or the other. But I think that is your best bet. I think you try to get the name George Lucas into Star Wars or on Star Wars one final time. You sort of get his blessing that I don't feel like we got with the sequel trilogy, especially when news came out about how Bob Iger may have altered the deal with him, or maybe kind of misinformed him about what was going to be done with his sequel trilogy treatments, that he kind of gave the impression they were going to make them and then they didn't, and Lucas was a little bit mad about that.
And obviously to
And
sell
you
them
sold
off,
them.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and
So yeah, I think best case scenario is you do something involving George Lucas, and then you try to kind of have a fresh start with Star Wars from there. All right, and the next question comes to us from WBF who asked, "Hey Thor, KK is said to be leaving by the end of 2025. Her decisions caused a lot of damage to Star Wars, no doubt. She wanted to leave with a big win, which did not happen. She wanted to leave a lasting legacy, and she might want to make some decisions before she leaves for good. People looking to build or protect their legacy are often very dangerous. Do you think she might damage Star Wars even more just to protect her legacy? In my opinion, yes." And I guess a lot depends on just how much power she actually has right now. Sometimes when someone is on the way out, you kind of do take the reins away from them or take the ship away from them and steer it yourself for a little while. So it might be that she has no real power to do much of anything until a replacement is found and put in place. And speaking of that, there is another insider, and there are tons of leaks and rumors coming out right now, so take this for what it is. But there's another insider who says she's been wanting to leave for a while now, but they didn't have any solid or decent replacements. They did not know who to put in this position, and it is sort of, as this article said, it is a sort of thankless position. Nobody wants to be the president of Lucasfilm, because with it comes the wrath of the fans, that you cannot make Star Wars fans happy, that they're always going to find a reason to complain about everything. And to a degree, yeah, that's true. Star Wars fans care a great deal about Star Wars. They're going to be a little fussy. They want to see it handled well. And they're going to, and should be allowed to, speak their mind when it comes to how good or bad they think Star Wars is. Nevertheless, yeah, sometimes they go a little far or can be very hard to please. But again, this is Star Wars. This is or is supposed to be the premier franchise, right? It's like, to do a sports analogy, it's like taking over the Yankees. You better win some games, you better go to the World Series, or your fans are going to let you know about it. But anyway, I got a little off track there, but I don't know that she would have a ton of power to really make some huge decisions on the way out. I think her last gasp, essentially, was the Rey movie. I do think that was all her wanting to kind of salvage the character and salvage her legacy. I've discussed this before, I know. I think she really wanted to go out with a win, and she wanted that win to be Rey kind of becoming the icon she always envisioned her to be. But now with her leaving, I think the Rey movie definitely has a huge question mark around it. I know they just brought in another new writer and they're trying to kind of keep it alive, but if she is leaving, I don't know. I don't know that that movie ever gets made. I could be wrong. But it got announced 2 years ago at Celebration at this point, and there's really nothing to show for it other than maybe a few scripts that have been completed and rejected by Kennedy. So again, I really think that was her last gasp. I don't know that she has any real power to damage things on the way out. I would imagine whoever the next president is probably already decided and is already maybe moving into the position, but who knows? That's just me speculating. I have nothing to base that on other than my gut feeling. All right, next question comes to us here from Art Official Joe, who said, "Hey Thor, so how much actual impact will Kathleen Kennedy's dismissal have on the Mando and Grogu movie? Will this give former Star Wars fans the excuse they need to hop back on the shuttle and head back to the theater in 2026? I know Kennedy leaving has no impact on the quality of that movie, but it might be the spark that some need to get back into the fandom." And yeah, that's kind of what I've been saying. I think there are a lot of fans who have just been waiting for this day, the day Kennedy goes, and to see what Lucasfilm can do without her. Now, as you point out, I don't know that the Mando and Grogu movie is indicative of what Lucasfilm will be without her, because she's been here pretty much the whole time, or has been here the whole time of its creation, and might even still be here for months to come yet. So that shouldn't be conflated with the post-Kennedy era. But I still think you're right that some fans might give it a chance now that otherwise wouldn't have, and if the movie turns out to be good, and fingers crossed that it is, it could be something that starts to win back some fans, even though, again, it is a Kennedy-era thing. And I would say, at worst, this movie, the Mando and Grogu movie, is just going to be something that's kind of harmless overall, that it maybe isn't the greatest movie ever, but it's not something that damages the lore or anything else like that. And at best, maybe it's a fun, action-packed movie that does offer some juicy tidbits of things to come in the Mandoverse era, with the potential Heir to the Empire movie that Dave Filoni is going to do, or seems like he's going to do. I don't know. Like I said, I do think that Kennedy leaving is an opening for some fans to come back, and some fans are just never going to come back, or maybe they're just waiting for the sequels to be retconned. That might be the thing that brings them back. But either way, again, I'm hoping that whatever comes next, whatever the next era of Star Wars looks like, that it is a good era of Star Wars. Okay, and let's do one final question here, and it comes to us from JMS Rex, who asked, "Hey Thor, not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm kind of shocked right now about how apathetic I feel about this. I mean, I'm kind of glad she's departing, but I'm not really excited about a new potential direction. I guess there's probably a few different reasons, but I think my main concern is that Disney is still going to be in charge. Kathleen wasn't the best executive, but she also had a bunch of unnecessary pressure from Disney, and the next executive will have the same hurdles, if not worse, since the franchise is in such a poor state. Anyways, my question is, do you think, even if all goes right, that we'll be able to get Star Wars fans excited again? I know we won't get Force Awakens level of excitement, but will we be able to get maybe the engagement and consistent quality we had from the 90s to 2012? I don't know. Hope that makes sense. And yeah, your question I think makes perfect sense, and I honestly don't know that we ever see Star Wars reach that kind of excitement level ever again, like we did in, say, the late 90s when the prequels were coming, or in the 2000s or mid 2010s when the sequels were coming. But those were examples of Star Wars coming back for the first time in 15 or 16 years since the OT. And then we were getting the sequels to Star Wars. We were getting the old characters back, and that kind of excitement, I don't know that anything can compare to that. That was just special in both cases. And I'm not saying that the movies necessarily ended up being special in the case of the sequels, but that level of excitement would be hard to ever capture again. But I do think you can get fans excited for Star Wars again. Like I was saying before, I think your best bet right now is to try and get George Lucas's name attached to a new Star Wars project. That is about the only thing that could hope to reach those levels or get close to reaching those kind of levels of excitement. And yeah, I know Lucas has some detractors out there too, or some people will cry it's just desperation. They're just doing everything they possibly can to nostalgia bait you into the theaters or whatever it might be. But honestly, I think Lucas doing one more Star Wars project would get, again, I don't know about those levels of excitement. I don't know that anything ever brings Star Wars back to that. But I do think Lucas coming back can get us excited again. And I do think we can get consistently good Star Wars like we did from, as you point out, from the 90s to the 2012s when Disney took over. I don't think there's any reason Star Wars can't be handled well by the right person or people. Yes, there has been a ton of damage done. Yes, there are some that will never come back. But that doesn't mean that whoever comes in next can't get things right, can't put out consistently good Star Wars, and that fans won't trickle back and once again be happy to be Star Wars fans. Alright, well I think that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below. Tell me what you think about anything or everything I had to say here, or about this whole situation with Kennedy leaving and who might replace her. Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. Just start your comment off with "Hey Thor," ask your question, and I'll try to answer it in a future video. But whatever you do, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.